Kia ora, Chris from NIWA here with a seasonal climate outlook, the last one for the summer. This is February through to April. Let's get to it. What do you need to know? I'm going to disappear and look at the headlines. Well, the last month of summer is looking warmer than January, which I know is probably not saying that much considering January was an unusually cool month for much of the country. This coming after an unusually warm December. So February, kind of the deciding month, if you will. La Nina is here. If you want to sound smart at the next dinner party, just drop that word in parentheses. Motoki. It's a Japanese word that means same but different. It's an atypical La Nina. So that means atypical La Nina impacts here in Aotearoa, New Zealand. So let's get to the detail moving forward with the pressure map. Actually, before we get that, let's talk about what you need to know. Again, I'm going to disappear, go full frame. Look, a warmer than average next 3 months, and I'm going to use my words carefully. 3 months. Look, this is not a 3-day outlook. This is not a 3-week outlook. This is a 3-month outlook. So there'll be peaks and valleys. And when you smooth out the peaks and valleys, our expectation is that areas across the North Island, particularly Upper North Island, where I'm pointing to, and the East and the Western North Island, I beg your pardon, will find above average temperatures. For the rest of the country, look, it's about equal chances as I come back on screen, equal chances. So look at it this way. It's a spectrum. Below average, we think that's pretty darn unlikely for the next 3 months. Again, a 3-month period. Somewhere between average and above average is the most likely outcome for the rest of the country as I disappear again. What about rainfall? Rainfall, it's going to be a dry start, but in spite of that dry start, we do think we're going to make up for lost ground as we're going to see, more than likely, we're going to see a normal and some places above normal rainfall. If above normal rainfall were to occur, we think it's likely to occur in the colored areas, this tealish, bluish green across much of the country. The exception, the west of the South Island, this is a wet place, summer into early autumn, and there will be some extended dry spells interspersed with periods of rain, and when it all comes out in the wash, coming back on screen, we think it'll be near normal seasonal or 3-monthly rainfall. All right then, so back to the maps we go. Let's start off as we typically do with a shorter kind of lens or a shorter look at the outlook, starting with the near term. So we're recording this on the last day of January, pinching the punch for the last of the month. And if we zoom out, this is February 2nd. So the first weekend of February, looking very warm. High pressure, you see the red, these are pressure anomalies. So red, higher pressure, happy weather. Blue, lower pressure, lousy weather. You can see we have a lot of red over us. It's going to be a warm, if not a hot weekend. Much of the Waikato, Northland, and Auckland well into the 20s, with some places flirting with 30 degrees, especially on Sunday, the second day of February across the Waikato. And we can show you this by looking at our temperature anomaly. You can see a lot of this red. It's faint over the North Island and western South Island. And you can see as we go through time, we see a surge of red for the first few days of the new week, of the first full week of February. Notice a lot of that blue, the coolness, that stays to our east. It may graze Tarawhiti Gisborne. Gisborne's had a really chilly January. Second coldest January on record since 1905 in Tarawhiti Gisborne. But after a bit of a cool period, we see more warmth coming back in. I want to go back to the pressure map and jumping around on it. Here's why. Look at this. As I'm going to shift our view north, look up here in the Coral Sea. There is expected to be an increase in tropical activity. That's just a big fancy term meteorologists like myself use for it's going to get stormy up across the tropics. And when that happens, we'll increase the odds for a tropical cyclone. It wouldn't be, look, it's probably more likely than not we see a tropical cyclone form in the days before Waitangi Day, all right? Probably 3 or 4 days potentially before Waitangi Day. And that'll be up across the Coral Sea. But watch what happens. That blue starts to move south. So we do have to watch probably after Waitangi Day, maybe toward the end, I'm going to use air quotes, Waitangi weekend. Why? Well, Friday's not a public holiday. It's Thursday. But a lot of people are, taking off Friday to make it a long weekend. So let's call it a long weekend. toward the end of that quasi-pseudo long weekend, we could start to see moisture from the north creep into the North Island. Look, I'm recording this, as I say, the 31st of January, and we'll see how this ages as we move through time. But look, it's distinctly possible the Sunday or Monday or something to that nature after Waitangi, we'll be watching to the north for tropical moisture and influences from the tropics. And it's likely that this area will be a breeding ground for tropical activity intermittently, that's just a big fancy word for on and off, throughout the month of February. So we'll have to keep our eyes peeled to the north. What does that mean for rainfall in Aotearoa, New Zealand? I'm glad you asked. So this is our NIWA 35. Now, this is a 7-day chunk. So we're looking at 7 days, and we're averaging things out over a 7-day period, right? And where you see the brown, that's below normal rainfall, and it's deep brown. So that means it could be really below normal rainfall. Doesn't mean it won't rain. It just means that, well, it won't rain as much as it should or typically does in late January and early February. One exception, perhaps toward the lower Manawatu, where they could use the rain. Why can they use the rain? It's been dry there. I'll get to that in a second. Then, as we move through the second week, so this is the week from the 5th of February. So this is the 5th, I think, to the 11th or 12th, if I got my math right. Still looking dry. And you're probably thinking, well, geez, Chris, that doesn't look good. You said normal to above normal rain. Again, 3-month outlook, not a 3-week outlook. We're just looking at the first couple weeks. This is a 13-week outlook, 3 months, right? Quarter of a year. Let's go back to that map. So, still dry, maybe a bit of wetness, eastern part of the North Island, but generally a dryling for much of the country. Things change. Ooh, look at that. You can see some green, a lot of it deep green. Much of the eastern North Island, up across much of Northland, Auckland region. Look, this is telling us that from the 12th to the 19th, we got to watch out for some heavy rain. And look, I'm going to be honest, not that I wouldn't anyway. Meteorologists are always honest, aren't we? Okay, insert joke. So, the thinking is this. The timing could be off a little bit. What I mean by off is that, look, this is guidance. It's not gospel. Don't lock it in. We're trying to tell you themes. This could happen a little bit earlier. I wouldn't be surprised maybe the 10th, the 9th, the 11th, again, after Waitangi weekend or around there. So while it says from the 12th, truth be told, it could be from the 10th or something like that. The message is, as we near the end or just after that Waitangi weekend, we have to watch to the north, and this is the computer model telling us that. And still dry for the South Island, mind you. What about week 4? We still see a bit of a wet signal for the eastern North Island. Still some dryness for much of the South Island and North Island, apart from the eastern North Island. Week 5, that's interesting. This is the last day or 3 of February, so 7 days from the 27th into early March. And we are seeing signals where rainfall could be abundant for the northern and eastern part of the North Island and even eastern South Island. Still that dry theme for the western South Island. So February looks to be dry for the western South. The western South Island is going to be dry for February. So if you got holiday plans, it looks pretty good from a holiday perspective. But if you're on tank water and from a fire perspective, not looking good. Rainfall, not what it should be, is very likely for the west of the South Island for February. Beyond February, things are likely to change. And what I mean by that, as you can see with our outlook, if we're going to be below normal in February, but our long-range outlook for 3 months calls for near normal, that tells you we're going to make up for that lost ground in the form of probably some rainy episodes March and April. That's what the guidance is telling us. All right, so what's driving things? We talked about La Nina. It's here, but I use this word going back to the very beginning. Modoki? Same but different? It's a Japanese word. What do you mean by that? Well, it just, same but different. It means it's central based. So let's go back to those sea surface temperatures, right? So we're going to bring this through to the most recent, as we're recording this again, late in January. And guess what I get to do now? I get to play a little bit, a little sandbox action. So this is, as I bring it out, this area right here that I'm drawing You see this blue? Those are cool ocean temperatures. Well, I'll take that back. Cooler than average, because there's that word, anomaly. So difference from normal, delta. The ocean is cooler than what it usually is in this part of the world. Why is that a big deal? Because typically with La Nina, we don't see these cooler ocean temperatures this far to the west. We generally see this area of warmth in terms of ocean temperatures. We see that a little bit farther east, so let's get rid of that. We typically see this patch of warmer water. Typically, that's a little farther this way. It's not, though. So because we have this atypical oceanic setup, the atmosphere is responding, guess what? Atypically. And guess what? The impacts here in Aotearoa, New Zealand, they're going to be, atypical. So generally speaking, when we have La Nina going to, I'll just stick with this map, I guess. We generally have winds that favor the east and northeast. It doesn't mean that happens every day. It just means it happens more than usual. That's what history tells us. But with this La Nina, we'll see that, but there will be periods where the wind or the airflow comes from, that's a lousy arrow. Boy, that is awful. I should have Stu edit that out, but Stu won't. He'll make me just, I got to own that, and I will. We typically see airflow, what we will see, I should say, airflow is coming from the northwest and the southwest. So in summary, we're not going to see persistent airflows east and northeast, easterly, like, in the years past with La Nina. We're going to see this variability, this just changeability. At times, yes, airflow coming from the north and east. At other times, airflow coming from the west and northwest. And with those changing airflows will come changeable weather patterns, including rainfall patterns. I mentioned earlier, I want to go to before I go to the New Zealand Drought Index, I want to show you what's happening at depth. This is very important because this tells us what's going on not only at the surface but beneath the surface. So this is the date line I'm pointing to. You see the date line? It's a nice and imaginary line. We kind of know where it is. It's just east of Gizzy, right? So to the east of the date line, we see a bucket load of blue beneath the surface. So let's mind our graph. We got 50 meters, 100 meters, all the way down to 450 meters below the surface of the ocean. And you can see at depth, 100, 200 meters beneath the ocean, the water is unusually chilly. That's east of the date line. West of the date line, the water is unusually warm. We clearly have this polarity, this dichotomy, this distinction between chilly compared to usual to the east, warm compared to the usual to the west. And that is going to generate different airflows. That is La Nina, but once again, we typically don't see this blue so far west. That is the difference maker. Right, so I talked earlier about, he said, the New Zealand Drought Index. So let's touch on that, and then we'll probably wrap things up. Things have gotten dry. So this is the latest New Zealand Drought Index. It says February 1, but what's a couple days amongst friends? It's actually, I think, the 29th of February as of that. You get the idea. It's stinking dry. Look at this as I zoom around. Let's start with the North Island. We have meteorological drought in place over the northern Manawatu. That's the red. So mind this color bar. Red, drought. Meteorological drought. Much, if not all, of Taranaki is extremely dry. And that extends to parts of southwest Northland. Let's zoom in just a skosh. That's another Japanese. How about that? 2 Japanese words I've used. Skosh means just a little bit. Comes from skoshi, I believe. So there you go. Weaving in a little multicultural there. So, yeah, a little bit of dryness over towards southwest Northland. Not a little bit. Extremely dry. Look, good news things at the east or the Bay of Islands, north of Whangarei. This was really dry about 2 weeks ago. Bit of rain changed that, so that's good news. I do want to go down to the South Island because you can see interior portions of Otago, North Otago, and far southwest Canterbury. They're getting dry. It's dry to very dry. And look at Milford Sound. Boy, you don't see this much. This is one of the wettest places. Well, it is the wettest place in New Zealand. And look at this. Look at this. It's dry. In some places, extremely dry. And guess what? We just showed you the NIWA 35 for the next 4 or 5 weeks. pardon my language, it ain't going to get better. My grammar. I hope the English teacher isn't watching. So, look, in the west of the South Island, things are going to get dry in the shorter to medium term, but we should see things turn around as we work our way into March and April. So, once again, west of the South Island, February, dry and warm. For the rest of the country, we got a dry start to February, but we're watching, there it is, end of week 1, start of week 2, so like the 8th, the 9th, the 12th of February for some tropical moisture, which could give us some heavy rainfall. And that will be a theme during the 3-month period. That is, we have to watch what happens to our north because, well, 2 things. La Nina tends to favor airflows, as we talked about, east and northeast. But also, this is the peak of the tropical cyclone season. Historically, what we call climatologically, that's a big word if I can say it, that means weather history, late summer into about early, maybe mid-autumn, that is the peak of tropical cyclone season. So because of that, activity to the north will be something worth monitoring, and we could see that as early as end of week 1, start of week 2 of February, and there could be more to follow as we march our way through the rest of the 3-month period, March and April. So yeah, something to be mindful of, the potential for big rainfall events. So that's it for me. Thanks for watching. If you want a complete read of the seasonal climate outlook, I invite you to go to niwa.co.nz or simply type SCO or seasonal climate outlook into Uncle Google, and you'll be on your way. And by the way, lastly, this right here, the NIWA 35, this is updated every day. It's freely available. It's on that same website where there is the seasonal climate outlook that you punched into Uncle Google, or you can simply type drought dashboard monitoring, I believe it is, and you'll get there as well. So a couple ways to see that. We'll see you next time. I'm NIWA forecaster Chris Brandolino. Namihi Nui.